A virgin billionaire, single for 35 years, spends a night with an experienced nurse and blessed with twins. A very emotional story. Hello, my beautiful family. Oh, how I've missed connecting with each one of you since our last emotional journey together. Today, I'm thrilled to share a story that touched my heart deeply as I crafted it. A tale about how life's most unexpected encounters can completely transform our existence. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed everything? A chance meeting that redirected your entire path? This story of Elliot and Clara, a virgin billionaire and a compassionate nurse whose worlds collide in the most beautiful way, reminds us that love finds us when we least expect it, and that opening our hearts to vulnerability can bring the greatest blessings. As you experience their journey, I hope you'll feel the emotions I poured into every word. Your connection to these stories means everything to me. If moments of this tale touch your soul, please share those feelings in the comments below. What part of their story resonates most with you? Which character do you relate to? Your thoughts inspire me and help me create stories that speak directly to your heart. If you're new here, join our beautiful family by subscribing. Now, let's begin this incredible journey together.
The morning sun glinted off the glass facade of Kane Industries headquarters, the 70-story monument to innovation that dominated the Manhattan skyline. Inside the penthouse office, Elliot Kane stood motionless before floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city below with detached curiosity. At 35, he possessed everything money could buy, yet nothing that truly mattered. "Mr. Kane, your 9 o'clock is waiting," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Elliot straightened his custom Italian suit. "Send them in." The boardroom fell silent as he entered. 12 executives, each earning 7 figures annually, held their breath as Elliot took his seat. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, exacting, and utterly unreachable. "The quarterly reports," he said simply, extending his hand. As the meeting progressed, Elliot's mind drifted. He'd built Kane Technologies from a startup in his college dorm room to a global powerhouse valued at $78 billion. His innovations in artificial intelligence had revolutionized healthcare, transportation, and communication. Yet despite his success, something fundamental was missing. Later that evening, his driver navigated through traffic toward his estate in the Hamptons. The mansion, a modernist masterpiece of glass, steel, and concrete, stood isolated on 20 acres of manicured grounds. Security systems monitored every inch of the property, keeping the world at bay. "Will you be needing anything else tonight, sir?" asked Reynolds, his house manager. "No, thank you," Elliot replied, already retreating to his private wing. Alone in his study, surrounded by first-edition books and priceless art, Elliot poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. The amber liquid caught the light as he swirled it, contemplating the emptiness that had become his constant companion. Few people knew the truth about Elliot Kane. Behind the corporate legend and tabloid speculation lay a man who had never known intimate love. His virginity wasn't a choice made from religious conviction or moral stance. It was the result of emotional walls built so high that no one had ever scaled them. His childhood explained much. Born to wealthy but distant parents, young Elliot had been raised by a rotation of nannies and sent to elite boarding schools. His father, a cold industrialist, had viewed emotions as weaknesses. His mother, trapped in a loveless marriage, had sought comfort in social engagements and charity functions, leaving little time for her only son. At Harvard, while other students explored relationships, Elliot had immersed himself in code and business plans. His awkwardness around women had evolved into a carefully constructed persona of aloofness. As his wealth grew, so did his isolation. Women pursued him for his money, not for himself, reinforcing his belief that true connection was impossible. Now, at 35, Elliot had resigned himself to solitude. His rare appearances at charity galas and business functions sparked endless speculation about his personal life. The tabloids had labeled him the Ice Billionaire, a moniker he neither confirmed nor denied. The truth was simpler and more complex. Elliot Kane had never learned how to love or be loved. His phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Maxwell, his personal physician. Annual physical scheduled for tomorrow, 10 a.m. Please fast for midnight. Elliot sighed. These checkups were a necessary inconvenience, especially since his father had died of a heart attack at 50. Despite his youth, Elliot was acutely aware of his mortality. Another reason he worked relentlessly, determined to leave a legacy through his technological innovations if not through family. That night, as he lay in his king-size bed, Elliot stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was all life had to offer. Success without joy. Wealth without warmth. Achievement without connection. Little did he know that tomorrow's routine medical appointment would alter the course of his carefully controlled existence. Morning arrived with a spectacular sunrise over the Atlantic. Elliot completed his usual routine, a 5-mile run on his private beach, a cold shower, and a protein shake prepared by his personal chef. By 9:30, his driver was taking him to Dr. Maxwell's exclusive medical practice in Manhattan. The waiting room was empty, a privilege of his status, and the exorbitant annual fee he paid for concierge medical service. Dr. Maxwell, a distinguished man in his 60s who had treated 3 generations of New York's elite, greeted him warmly. "Elliot, good to see you. How have you been feeling?" "Fine. Busy as always." The examination proceeded routinely until Dr. Maxwell frowned at the EKG readings. "I'm noticing some irregularities in your heart rhythm," he said, his tone shifting from casual to professional. "Nothing immediately alarming, but I'd like to run some additional tests." Elliot nodded, unconcerned. "Schedule whatever you need. Actually, I'd prefer to monitor you for the next 24 hours. Given your family history, I don't want to take chances." For the first time that day, Elliot felt a flicker of unease. "Is that necessary?" "I have meetings." "Your health takes precedence over business," Dr. Maxwell interrupted firmly. "I'm going to arrange for a cardiac nurse to stay with you at your home. She'll monitor your vitals and alert me to any changes." Elliot's jaw tightened. The thought of a stranger in his private space was deeply unsettling. "I don't need a babysitter." "Think of it as a precaution," Dr. Maxwell replied, already dialing his phone. "Clara is one of our best. She's discreet and professional." Before Elliot could protest further, arrangements were made. He left the office with a portable heart monitor attached to his chest and the unwelcome knowledge that his sanctuary would soon be invaded. As his car pulled away from the medical building, Elliot gazed out the window, unaware that his life was about to change in ways he could never have anticipated. The emergency room at Manhattan Memorial Hospital pulsed with controlled chaos as Clara Morgan completed her 12-hour shift. At 33, she moved through the trauma unit with practiced efficiency, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, her green eyes alert despite the exhaustion tugging at her limbs. "Morgan, we've got incoming." Dr. Patel called out as paramedics rushed through the automatic doors with a gurney. Clara was already moving, gloved hands ready as they transferred the patient, teenage boy, victim of a hit and run. For the next 2 hours, she worked alongside the trauma team, her movements precise, her voice calm as she spoke reassurances to the frightened boy between medical procedures. When his condition finally stabilized, Clara stepped back, rolling her shoulders to release the tension. This was her world, a place where life and death balanced on a knife's edge, where her skills made tangible differences every day. "You're a miracle worker," Dr. Patel said, peeling off his gloves. "That kid wouldn't have made it without you." Clara smiled tiredly. "Just doing my job. Go home, Morgan. You look dead on your feet." She nodded, making her way to the staff locker room. As she changed out of her scrubs, her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Maxwell, a respected cardiologist who occasionally requested her services for private patients. "Need experienced cardiac nurse for 24-hour monitoring. High-profile patient. Double your usual rate. Available." Clara hesitated. She planned to spend her day off catching up on sleep and visiting her mother at Golden Oaks Assisted Living. But the extra money would help with Mom's mounting medical bills. Since her father's death 5 years ago, Clara had become the sole support for her mother, whose early-onset dementia required specialized care. Available. Details, she texted back. The response came quickly. Patient Elliot Kane. Location, his private residence. Car will pick you up in 1 hour. Clara nearly dropped her phone. Elliot Kane, the reclusive tech billionaire whose innovations had transformed modern medicine. His AI diagnostic systems were used in hospitals worldwide, including hers, and now she will be monitoring his heart in his home. She rushed to her modest one-bedroom apartment in Queens, showered, and packed an overnight bag with essentials. As promised, a sleek black car arrived precisely 1 hour later. The driver, a formal man in his 50s, opened the door for her. Ms. Morgan? I'm Reynolds, Mr. Kane's house manager. Dr. Maxwell briefed me on the situation. During the drive to Long Island, Clara reviewed the medical information Dr. Maxwell had sent to her tablet. Elliot Kane's EKG showed minor arrhythmias, nothing immediately life-threatening, but concerning given his family history of heart disease. As they approached the Kane estate, Clara's professional curiosity was overtaken by awe. The property was magnificent, a modern fortress nestled among ancient trees, with the Atlantic Ocean visible beyond. Security gates opened automatically as they approached, and cameras tracked their progress up the winding driveway. Mr. Kane values his privacy, Reynolds explained, noting her expression. The media has been particularly intrusive since his latest technological breakthrough. Clara nodded, understanding. In her profession, patient confidentiality was sacred. He can trust my discretion. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive. Soaring ceilings, minimalist decor, and technology seamlessly integrated into every surface. Yet despite its grandeur, the house felt strangely empty, lacking the warmth that transformed a building into a home. Reynolds led her to a guest suite larger than her entire apartment. You'll stay here, adjacent to Mr. Kane's quarters. The monitoring equipment has been delivered and set up in his study. Mr. Kane will meet you there in 30 minutes. Left alone, Clara unpacked her medical bag and changed into her professional attire, navy slacks and a simple blouse, with her credentials visible on her lanyard. She was reviewing Kane's medical history one final time when Reynolds returned to escort her to the study. Elliot Kane stood by a wall of windows overlooking the ocean, his back to the door. Even in profile, he was striking, tall and lean, with dark hair showing touches of silver at the temples despite his relative youth. We turned to face her. Clara was struck by the intensity of his blue eyes and the guarded expression they held. Ms. Morgan, he said, his voice deep and measured. I want to clarify that this arrangement is Dr. Maxwell's idea, not mine. Clara maintained her professional demeanor. I understand, Mr. Kane. I'll try to be as unobtrusive as possible while ensuring your cardiac function remains stable. He studied her for a moment, as if assessing a complex equation. You've worked with my AI diagnostic systems. It wasn't a question, but Clara nodded. Yes, they've revolutionized emergency medicine. Your technology saved the life of a teenage boy just this morning. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or satisfaction. Good. That's their purpose. For the next hour, Clara set up the monitoring equipment, explaining each step as she worked. Elliot answered her medical questions with precision, but volunteered nothing personal. When she placed the electrodes on his chest, she noted his slight tension, discomfort with physical contact, perhaps. These will transmit data continuously to my tablet, she explained. The adhesive is hypoallergenic, but let me know if you experience any irritation. He nodded, quickly toning his shirt. And how long will this surveillance last? 24 hours, unless Dr. Maxwell extends it. I'll need to check your vitals every 4 hours, including overnight. Elliot frowned. That seems excessive. Cardiac events often occur during sleep, Clara explained patiently. I'll be as quick and non-disruptive as possible. As she finished setting up, Clara noticed a photograph partially hidden behind books on a shelf. the only personal item in the otherwise impersonal room. It showed a much younger Elliot with an older couple, presumably his parents. None of them were smiling. "Is there anything else you need to know about my routine?" Elliot asked, drawing her attention back. "Just maintain your normal activities, within reason. No strenuous exercise, excessive caffeine, or alcohol." He nodded curtly. "Reynolds will show you to the kitchen if you're hungry." "I have work to do." With that dismissal, Clara gathered her equipment and left him alone, wondering what events had shaped this brilliant, isolated man who had everything and seemingly no one. Evening descended on the Kane estate, bringing with it a spectacular sunset that painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Clara stood at the window of the kitchen, momentarily transfixed by the view while waiting for her tea to steep. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Reynolds appeared beside her, arranging dinner items on a tray. "Though I suspect Mr. Kane rarely notices." "Does he always work this much?" Clara asked, having observed Elliot on video conference calls for the past 3 hours. Reynolds' expression softened with something like paternal concern. "For as long as I've served him. 10 years now, and I've never known him to take a vacation." Clara sipped her tea thoughtfully. "That can't be good for his heart. Perhaps you could mention that during your medical assessment," Reynolds suggested, a hint of conspiracy in his tone. "He might listen to a healthcare professional." Clara smiled but shook her head. "I'm here to monitor his heart, not lecture him on his lifestyle." Yet as she checked the cardiac readings on her tablet, she couldn't help but notice the correlation between Elliot's stress levels and the minor arrhythmias. His heart was literally responding to the pressure he placed on himself. At 8 o'clock, she knocked on his study door for the scheduled checkup. Enter came his clipped response. Elliot sat behind a massive desk, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex code and financial projections. He barely glanced up as Clara approached with her medical kit. "This will just take a few minutes," she assured him, placing a blood pressure cuff around his arm. As she worked, Clara noticed the tension in his shoulders and the slight shadows beneath his eyes. Professional instinct took over. "When did you last eat, Mr. Kane?" He frowned, as if the question required complex calculation. "I had coffee this morning." "That's not eating," Clara replied, her nurse's authority overriding her awareness of his status. "Your body needs fuel, especially when under medical observation." Elliot looked at her with mild surprise, clearly unaccustomed to being addressed so directly. "I'm in the middle of something important." "Your health is important," Clara countered, removing the blood pressure cuff. "Your readings show elevated stress levels. Food and rest would help stabilize them." For a moment, they locked eyes in silent challenge. Then, unexpectedly, Elliot's expression softened fractionally. "What would you suggest, Nurse Morgan?" "Dinner. Something nutritious. And then perhaps a break from those screens." To her surprise, he closed the holographic displays with a wave of his hand. "Reynolds has prepared something, I believe." They moved to a formal dining room where Reynolds had set 2 places at one end of a table designed to seat 20. Clara hesitated, uncertain if she was meant to join him. "Please." Elliot gestured to the chair across from his. "I dislike eating alone, and you need to monitor me anyway." The meal was exquisite: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and quinoa prepared by Elliot's personal chef. Clara ate appreciatively, aware of the luxury, but focused on her patient. "How long have you been a nurse?" Elliot asked unexpectedly. 12 years. I specialized in trauma care after my residency, then added cardiac certification 3 years ago." "Why nursing?" The question seemed genuine, not mere politeness. Clara considered her answer. "My younger brother had leukemia when I was a teenager. I spent a lot of time in hospitals, watching how the nurses made unbearable situations bearable. They had a kind of practical magic. They couldn't always fix everything, but they could always do something to help. I wanted that ability." "And your brother?" "He recovered. He's a music teacher in Oregon now." Elliot nodded, absorbing this information. "Your parents must be proud." A shadow crossed Clara's face. My father passed away 5 years ago. My mother has dementia. She's in assisted living now. I'm sorry, Elliot said, and for the first time his voice carried genuine emotion. Life happens to everyone, Clara replied simply. Even billionaires. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Indeed. As they continued eating, Clara noticed Elliot gradually relaxing. His questions became more frequent, his responses less guarded. She learned he had studied at Harvard, that he played chess, that he preferred winter to summer. Small details that humanized the legend. After dinner, they moved to a less formal sitting room where a fireplace cast warm light across comfortable furniture. Clara checked Elliot's vitals again, pleased to see improvement. Your heart rate has stabilized, she noted. Whatever stress you were experiencing earlier has decreased. Perhaps good company is medically beneficial, he remarked, settling into an armchair with a glass of water. Clara smiled, taking the seat opposite him. It's well documented that positive social interaction reduces stress hormones and improves cardiovascular function. Is that why you became a private nurse? For the social interaction. Actually, this is a side job. I primarily work in the emergency department at Manhattan Memorial. Elliot's eyebrows rose slightly. That must be challenging. It is. But it's also incredibly rewarding. Clara paused, then added, Your AI diagnostic system has transformed our work. Last week, it identified a rare vascular condition in a patient that might have been missed until too late. For the first time, Elliot looked genuinely pleased. That's exactly what it was designed to do. Why healthcare? Clara asked. You could have applied your AI to any industry. Elliot was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the fireplace. My mother died of misdiagnosed pancreatic cancer when I was 22. By the time they identified it correctly, it was too advanced for treatment. I'm sorry, Clara said softly. I created the first prototype of the diagnostic AI during my graduate studies. It was personal. The admission hung in the air between them, a rare glimpse behind the public persona. Clara recognized the significance of his disclosure and didn't press further. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed more naturally. They discovered shared interests in classical music and historical fiction. Elliot revealed a dry wit that surprised and delighted Clara. For his part, he seemed genuinely interested in her stories from the emergency room, the triumphs and heartbreaks that composed her daily life. Around midnight, Clara noticed Elliot stifling a yawn. You should get some rest, she advised. Sleep is essential for cardiac health. He nodded, rising from his chair. And you? Will you sleep? I'll nap between monitoring your vitals, she assured him. I'm used to unusual hours. As they walked toward their respective rooms, a sudden crash of thunder shook the house. Moments later, rain began lashing against the windows with unexpected ferocity. Spring storms can be intense here by the ocean, Elliot commented. But the house is secure. Clara nodded, though something in his tone suggested he was reassuring himself as much as her. At his bedroom door, he paused. Thank you, Clara, he said, using her first name for the first time. This evening was unexpectedly pleasant. Good night, Elliot, she replied, matching his informality. I'll check on you in 4 hours. In her guest suite, Clara reviewed the cardiac data one last time before setting her alarm. Elliot's readings had improved significantly during their dinner and conversation. The human connection had been as effective as any medication. She was drifting to sleep when a tremendous crash jolted her awake. Lightning had struck nearby, and the house plunged into darkness. Emergency lights activated immediately, casting an eerie glow through the hallways. Clara grabbed her tablet and medical bag, moving quickly toward Elliot's room. The monitoring system had switched to battery backup, but she wanted to ensure the electrodes remained properly attached. She knocked on his door. When there was no answer, concern propelled her forward. Elliot? It's Clara. I'm coming in to check the equipment. The room was empty, the bed untouched. Frowning, Clara checked her tablet. The cardiac monitor showed elevated readings, nothing dangerous, but definitely indicating stress. Following her instincts, she made her way back to the study. There she found Elliot, illuminated by the glow of emergency lights, standing rigidly by the windows as lightning flashed across the turbulent ocean. "Elliot," she called softly. He turned, and in that unguarded moment, Clara saw naked vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't like storms," he said simply. Understanding dawned. This powerful man, this technological genius who commanded a global empire, harbored a primal fear of thunderstorms. The realization touched something deep within Clara. Her nurturing instinct, yes, but also a recognition of shared humanity. "Would you like company?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. Relief flickered across his features. "If you don't mind." They sat together in the dim light as the storm raged outside. Clara didn't press him to explain his fear, and Elliot didn't volunteer the information. Instead, they talked about inconsequential things: favorite books, travel destinations, childhood memories. Gradually, Elliot's cardiac readings normalized. The storm began to abate, the thunder growing more distant. In the intimate darkness, barriers continued to fall. "I was 8, Elliot said suddenly. "During a storm like this, our summer house was struck by lightning. The fire spread quickly. My nanny got me out, but she went back for my dog and never returned." Clara's heart ached for the child he had been. "I'm so sorry, Elliot. It was a long time ago," he said, but his voice betrayed the lingering trauma. Without thinking, Clara reached across and took his hand. It was a simple gesture of human comfort, the kind she offered to frightened patients daily. But as their fingers intertwined, something shifted between them, something neither had anticipated when the day began. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind a peaceful stillness that seemed to amplify the sound of their breathing. Elliot and Clara remained in the study, their hands still joined, neither willing to break the unexpected connection that had formed between them. "I should check your readings," Clara said finally, reluctantly withdrawing her hand to reach for her tablet. Elliot watched her face in the soft glow of the emergency lights. "How's my heart?" The double meaning wasn't lost on Clara. She smiled slightly as she reviewed the data. "Surprisingly stable, considering the circumstances." "I find that hard to believe," he murmured, his gaze never leaving her face. The power flickered back on, flooding the room with light that seemed harsh after the intimate darkness. The spell broken, Clara stood and smoothed her clothing, resuming her professional demeanor. "You should try to get some sleep," she advised. "It's nearly 3 in the morning." Elliot rose as well, towering over her slight frame. "Will you be able to rest?" "I'll manage. I'm scheduled to check your vitals at 4 anyway." He nodded, but made no move toward the door. "Clara," he began, then hesitated, as if uncertain how to proceed, a rare state for a man accustomed to commanding rooms full of executives. "Yes," she prompted gently. "Thank you for staying with me during the storm." "For not." He searched for the right words, judging my weakness. Clara's expression softened. "Fear isn't weakness, Elliot. It's human. And you're allowed to be human, even as a billionaire." Something in his face changed then, a subtle shift, like ice beginning to thaw. I spent so long being Elliot Kane's CEO that I sometimes forget there's a person beneath the title. "Well, I'm currently monitoring that person's heart," Clara replied with a small smile, "and I can confirm he definitely exists." Elliot laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his features, erasing years of carefully maintained reserve. "You're quite extraordinary, Clara Morgan." "I'm just doing my job," she demurred, though a flush of color touched her cheeks. "No," he said seriously. "You're doing much more than that." They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then, with visible reluctance, Elliot stepped back. "Good night, Clara. I'll see you at 4. "Good night, Elliot." In her room, Clara found sleep elusive. Her mind replayed the evening's events, the dinner conversation, the storm, the moment their hands had joined. She was experienced enough to recognize the dangerous territory she was entering. Elliot Kane was her patient, at least for the next 12 hours. Professional ethics demanded boundaries. Yet something about him called to her on a level that transcended the nurse-patient relationship. Behind his carefully constructed walls, she had glimpsed a man of depth and complexity, brilliant but wounded, powerful yet vulnerable. At 4 o'clock, she knocked softly on his bedroom door. When there was no answer, she hesitated, then entered quietly. The room was bathed in moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Elliot lay asleep on the massive bed, his features relaxed in a way they never were while awake. Clara approached silently, intending to check the monitoring equipment without waking him. But as she leaned over, his eyes opened, instantly alert. "Clara," he said, his voice husky with sleep. "I'm sorry to wake you," she whispered. "I just needed to check your readings." He sat up, the sheets pooling around his waist, revealing a muscular torso marked by the monitoring electrodes. "I wasn't really sleeping." Clara busied herself with the equipment, trying to maintain professional focus despite her acute awareness of his proximity. "Your readings look good. Much better than earlier." "I feel better," he admitted. "Lighter somehow." She nodded, understanding. Sharing burdens often has that effect. Elliot studied her in the moonlight, his expression thoughtful. "You carry many burdens for others, don't you? Your patients, your mother." The observation, so perceptive and unexpected, caught Clara off guard. "I suppose I do. Who carries yours?" The question hung in the air between them, simple yet profound. Clara had no ready answer. Since her father's death and her mother's decline, she had shouldered her responsibilities alone, finding purpose in caring for others but rarely allowing herself to be cared for. "I manage," she said finally. Elliot shook his head slowly. "That's not the same thing." Before she could respond, he reached out and took her hand, gently pulling her to sit beside him on the edge of the bed. The gesture was bold yet tentative, as if he was acting on instinct rather than calculation. "Elliot," Clara began, uncertain. "No," he interrupted softly. "This is inappropriate. I'm your patient. You're my nurse. There are 1,000 reasons why we should maintain professional distance." "Yes," she agreed, though she made no move to withdraw her hand from his. "But in the past 12 hours, you've seen me more clearly than people who have known me for years. And I feel—" He paused, searching for words. "I feel alive in your presence." Awake after a very long sleep, Clara's heart raced, her professional resolve weakening. "This situation is temporary. Tomorrow, you'll return to your world, and I'll return to mine. Does it have to be that way?" The question hung between them, laden with possibility. Clara knew the sensible answer, the professional answer. But looking into Elliot's eyes, illuminated by moonlight, sensibility seemed suddenly overrated. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. Elliot reached up, his fingers gently tracing the curve of her cheek. "I've spent my life hiding behind walls, Clara. Tonight, for the first time in years, I want to tear them down." The moment stretched between them, taut with tension and possibility. Then, with a courage that surprised them both, Clara leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss began tentatively, a question rather than a declaration. But as Elliot's arms encircled her, drawing her closer, it deepened into something more profound, an answer, a promise, beginning. Time seemed to suspend as they explored this new territory together. For Clara, the world narrowed to sensation, the strength of his arms, the softness of his lips, the racing of his heart beneath her palm. For Elliot, each touch was a revelation, awakening parts of himself long dormant. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless. Elliot rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. "I've never—" he began. "I know," Clara whispered, understanding his unspoken confession. Their eyes met in the moonlight, a silent communication passing between them. No words were needed as Elliot drew her back into his embrace. What followed was a journey of discovery, tender, unhurried, and profound. For Elliot, who had denied himself human connection for so long, each caress was a step into unknown territory. His natural reserve gave way to wonder as Clara guided him with gentle patience. For Clara, the experience was equally transformative, not just physical intimacy, but the rare privilege of witnessing a soul unfurling after years of self-imposed isolation. They moved together in the moonlight, two people finding in each other something they hadn't known they were seeking. Their connection transcended the physical, touching something deeper, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different worlds. Afterward, they lay entwined, the monitoring equipment temporarily forgotten. Clara's head rested on Elliot's chest, her ear pressed against his heart, steady now, strong and sure. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Elliot's arms tightened around her. "I'm more than all right. He searched for the word, complete. "For the first time I can remember." Clara smiled against his skin, understanding exactly what he meant. Something had shifted between them, something neither had anticipated when the day began. What had started as a medical necessity had evolved into a profound connection that defied easy categorization. As dawn approached, reality began to intrude on their private world. Clara reluctantly disentangled herself from Elliot's embrace. "I should check your readings," she said, reaching for her tablet. "And then we both need some rest." Elliot caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Stay with me." The request was simple, but loaded with meaning. Clara hesitated, torn between professional responsibility and personal desire. "Just to sleep," he clarified, sensing her conflict. I don't want to let you go yet." How could she refuse? Clara settled back into his arms, her head finding its place on his shoulder, as if designed to fit there. Within minutes, Elliot's breathing deepened into sleep, peaceful, untroubled sleep that Clara suspected was rare for him. She lay awake a while longer, watching the first light of dawn illuminate his features. In repose, he looked younger, the lines of stress and control softened. What happened when morning fully arrived? When they returned to their respective roles and responsibilities? These questions hovered at the edges of her mind, but Clara pushed them away. For now, this moment was enough, this unexpected connection, this night that had changed everything. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But as Clara finally drifted to sleep in Elliot's arms, she allowed herself to hope that whatever had begun between them might somehow find a way to continue. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the windows. Clara woke first, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings before remembering where she was and with whom. Elliot slept peacefully beside her, one arm still draped protectively across her waist. Reality crashed in with sobering clarity. In a few hours, her professional obligation would end. Dr. Maxwell would arrive to evaluate Elliot's condition, and Clara would return to her apartment in Queens, to her shifts at the hospital, to her ordinary life. Carefully, she extricated herself from Elliot's embrace and gathered her clothes. In the adjoining bathroom, she stared at her reflection. Same face, same eyes, but something fundamentally changed. One night had altered her in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. When she emerged, Elliot was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed. His eyes found hers immediately, searching for reassurance. "Good morning," he said, his voice tentative. "Good morning," Clara replied, maintaining a careful distance. "How do you feel? Physically or emotionally?" A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Both, I suppose." Elliot considered the question. "Physically, better than I have in years. Emotionally, that's more complicated." Clara nodded, understanding perfectly. "Dr. Maxwell will be here at 10 to remove the monitoring equipment and evaluate your condition. And then you'll leave," Elliot stated, the words hanging heavy between them. "Yes." Silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Elliot stood and approached her, stopping just short of touching. "Clara, about last night?" "We don't need to analyze it," she interrupted gently. "It happened. It was beautiful. But we both have lives to return to. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. Is that what you want? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? To continue whatever had begun between them? To explore the connection that had formed so unexpectedly? The practical part of her brain listed all the reasons why that was impossible. Their different worlds, her professional ethics, the complications of his status and wealth. What I want doesn't matter, she said finally. We live in different realities, Elliot. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. Realities can change. Before she could respond, a discreet knock sounded at the door. They jumped apart like guilty teenagers as Reynolds' voice called through the wood. Mr. Kane, breakfast is ready whenever you'd like it. And Dr. Maxwell called to say he'll arrive at 10 as scheduled. Thank you, Reynolds. Elliot called back, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. We'll be down shortly. When Reynolds' footsteps faded, Clara sighed. I should go to my room and freshen up. Elliot nodded, though reluctance was written in every line of his body. We'll talk more after breakfast. But breakfast proved to be a stilted affair. Reynolds' presence created a buffer that prevented any meaningful conversation. Clara focused on reviewing Elliot's cardiac data, maintaining a professional demeanor that belied the intimacy they had shared hours earlier. Your readings have stabilized completely, she noted, showing him the tablet screen. The arrhythmias have resolved. So I'm cured. There was a hint of irony in his tone. The human heart is complex, Clara replied carefully. Physical symptoms often reflect emotional states. The monitoring period showed clear correlations between your stress levels and cardiac function. And your professional recommendation? Reduce stress. Make time for rest and human connection. She met his eyes briefly. Your heart needs more than just work, Elliot. He held her gaze, the double meaning clear between them. I'm beginning to understand that. At 10 o'clock precisely, Dr. Maxwell arrived. The older physician examined Elliot thoroughly, reviewed the monitoring data, and pronounced himself satisfied with the results. The arrhythmias appear to have been stress-related, he concluded, removing the electrodes from Elliot's chest. I recommend some lifestyle modifications, more regular sleep, less caffeine, perhaps some form of stress reduction like meditation. I'll consider it, Elliot replied noncommittally. Dr. Maxwell turned to Clara. Excellent work as always, Nurse Morgan. The continuous monitoring provided valuable insights. Thank you, Doctor. Clara kept her expression neutral, though she felt Elliot's eyes on her. Well, I'll leave you to pack up, Dr. Maxwell said, gathering his equipment. Elliot, I want to see you for a follow-up in 2 weeks. After the doctor departed, an awkward silence fell between them. Clara busied herself collecting her medical supplies, acutely aware of Elliot watching her every movement. So that's it, he finally asked. 24 hours, and we go our separate ways? Clara paused, her hand stilling on her medical bag. What did you expect, Elliot? I don't know, he admitted. I've never experienced anything like last night. I've never felt so connected to another person. His vulnerability touched her deeply. It was special for me, too. Then why are you so determined to end it? Clara turned to face him fully. Because I live in the real world, Elliot. I have responsibilities, a demanding job, a mother who depends on me. You're Elliot Kane, tech billionaire. Our worlds don't intersect. They did last night, he countered. That was an exception. A beautiful moment outside of time. Clara softened her tone. But moments end. Reality returns. Elliot stepped closer, determination hardening his features. I don't accept that. What if I want more than a moment? The question hung between them, laden with possibility and complication. Clara felt her resolve wavering under the intensity of his gaze. Elliot, you don't even know me. I know enough, he insisted. I know you're compassionate and strong. I know you face life's hardships with grace. I know you see me, not my wealth or status, but me. His words struck a chord deep within her. It was true. In their brief time together, They had connected on a level that transcended superficial details. But was that enough to bridge the vast differences in their circumstances? "What are you suggesting?" she asked cautiously. "Have dinner with me. Next Friday. Not as my nurse, but as yourself." The invitation was simple yet profound, a step from their extraordinary night into ordinary life. Clara hesitated, weighing the risks against the undeniable pull she felt toward this complex man. "I have the late shift on Friday," she said finally. "Saturday, then. Or Sunday. Any day that works for you." His persistence was touching in its earnestness. Before she could respond, Reynolds appeared at the doorway. "Ms. Morgan, your car is ready whenever you're prepared to leave." Reality intruded once more. Clara nodded her thanks, then turned back to Elliot. "I need to go." Something like panic flashed across his face. "Clara, please. At least think about it." She hesitated, then reached for her phone. "Give me your number." "Your personal number, not your assistant's." Relief washed over his features as he recited the digits, which Clara carefully entered into her contacts. "I'll think about it," she promised, gathering her belongings. "That's all I can offer right now." Elliot nodded, accepting this small victory. "I understand." At the front door, he stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Thank you, Clara. Not just for monitoring my heart, but for reminding me I have one." The sincerity in his voice nearly undid her. Impulsively, she rose on tiptoes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. "Take care of yourself, Elliot." Then she was gone, sliding into the waiting car, watching through the window as Elliot's figure grew smaller in the distance. The estate disappeared behind security gates, and Clara leaned back against the leather seat, emotionally exhausted. What had she done? Professional boundaries existed for good reasons. Getting involved with a patient, even a former one, was ethically questionable at best. And yet, the connection they had formed felt too significant to dismiss as merely circumstantial. The driver navigated through Long Island traffic toward Queens, the contrast between Elliot's world and hers growing more apparent with each passing mile. By the time they reached her modest apartment building, Clara had almost convinced herself that the entire experience had been a beautiful aberration, a moment outside normal life that couldn't and shouldn't continue. "Thank you," she told the driver as he opened her door. "Mr. Kane asked me to give you this," he replied, handing her an envelope. Inside her apartment, Clara opened it with trembling fingers. It contained a check for her nursing services, the amount agreed upon, nothing more that might suggest impropriety. But beneath the check was a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. "Clara, some people spend lifetimes searching for connections that form in an instant. I've lived 35 years behind walls of my own making. In one night, you showed me what exists beyond them. Whatever you decide about Saturday, know that you've changed me irrevocably, and for that I am grateful. Yours, Elliot." Clara sank onto her sofa, the note clutched in her hand. Tears welled unexpectedly in her eyes, not of sadness, but of recognition. In Elliot's words, she saw reflected her own feelings, the sense that something profound had occurred, something that defied easy categorization or dismissal. Her phone chimed with a text from the hospital, pulling her back to reality. Her shift started in 3 hours. Patients needed her. Life continued its relentless forward motion. Clara carefully placed Elliot's note in her bedside drawer. She would think about his invitation as promised. But first, she had responsibilities to fulfill, a life to live, a life that, until yesterday, had seemed entirely sufficient. Now she wasn't so sure. "My beautiful family, I must pause our journey here, with Clara standing at this crucial crossroads. What choice will she make? Can two people from such different worlds truly build something lasting? And what unexpected developments might forever alter their paths? The story of our virgin billionaire and compassionate nurse has only just begun to unfold, with life-changing revelations and profound challenges waiting in part 2 of this emotional journey. How has their story touched you so far? Do you believe Clara should walk away or take a chance on this unexpected connection? Which character resonates most with your own experiences? Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. I read every single one and treasure your insights. They truly inspire how these stories continue to evolve. If you're captivated by Elliot and Clara's journey, make sure you don't miss part 2 by subscribing to Love and Twilights right now and activating notifications. The continuation of their story will be available soonest, and I promise the emotional depth and surprising twist ahead will touch your heart in ways you can't imagine. Until we meet again, my beloved family, keep your hearts open to unexpected blessings.